Hi there, and welcome to Backstage with Speaking Your Brand. I'm Carol Cox, founder and CEO of Speaking Your Brand, and I have the pleasure of joining me today, Mary Beth Simon of Niche Partnership Consulting. Mary Beth has been a client of ours for the past year and a half, first in our Thought Leader Academy program, and now in our advanced program called the Catalyst Collective. I am excited today to dig into in-person speaking strategy, since that's where we're headed back to after 2 years of virtual presentations. I'm excited, maybe a little bit nervous, definitely can't fit in my heels. So we're going to chat about this today. Mary Beth, how are you doing? Thank you for being here.
I am doing well. Thank you so much for inviting me on your show.
First questions, what shoes did you wear at your most recent in-person event?
I completely lucked out because of the dress code for this event. I had low boots on, so flat low boots. It was a very easy entree back into the live speaking arena.
Yes, that is so true. I tried to wear heels last September. Wouldn't work, did not work at all. I had to go back to my flats, but that's okay. I mean, the only reason is because I'm short. I'm only 5'3". And the great thing about Zoom and video is that we all look the same height, but not
Yes.
so much when you're in person. All right, so let's get into some of the more serious things, even though we're like the shoes and having comfortable feet is a serious issue to me, but we're going to dive into some more serious things. And if you're listening to us live or in the replay, let us know in the comments, say hi. And of course, we're happy to take your questions along the way. So I have done several in-person speaking engagements since last fall, since kind of things started opening up and conferences and events started having in-person speaking again. And then, of course, I know you, Mary Beth, just returned from speaking at an in-person conference with another one coming up in a few months. So I thought we would dive into how we prepared for our in-person speaking engagements. Obviously, it's a lot more preparation involved than just hopping onto Zoom to do a virtual presentation. We'll also talk about any changes we made to the talks themselves, to the presentation itself, whether it's content or flow or anything that need particular thing about it, going from virtual to in-person. We'll talk about audience engagement and especially what we've noticed about what the audience wants when we're in person versus maybe what they wanted before the pandemic in person, and certainly what they wanted virtually. And then, Mary Beth, I'd love for us to also talk a bit about your own thought leadership journey over the past year. So let's dive into kind of the most recent in person speaking engagement that you had. Give us a rundown of kind of how did you go about thinking, preparing for it, thinking about your presentation for it.
Yeah, the most recent presentation was to the Pennsylvania Sustainable Agriculture Community. So contingency planning, of course, is very important to them, but it's not my typical business community or, female entrepreneurial community, that type of thing. So I was really cognizant of needing to tailor my examples. Uh, in the presentation to be relevant to that community. So after I got the presentation together, I socialized it with two different farmer females who I am friends with. So different age groups, one who just retired and one who basically just got into farming in the last 7 years and got their feedback on it. And then after I got their feedback, then I shared it in the Catalyst group
Mhm.
for your feedback, Carol. And of course, I had too many slides in there and I needed to cut it back, which was great because that was great advice because, I mean, they really wanted to have a bit of a conversation, and to have time to work on their plan in the room.
Well, that's a really good lesson there, Mary Beth, an observation. And I love slides. You know this because you've seen all of the video trainings that we provide. We have lots of slides, and there's always a time and place for slides. And here's one of the things, the changes I have seen going from in person prior to the pandemic, throughout the 2 years now of the pandemic, and now coming back into in person, is that I feel like audiences want more of that interaction and less of the lecturing or the training or the talking to, because they've just spent the past 2 years doing that on Zoom.
Yes, I agree completely. And there was another dynamic going on with this audience. So there is a bit of a natural barrier between business people and the agricultural entrepreneurial community. And so it was really important that I not come across too corporate, especially with a corporate background. And the whole slide thing it can be a little corporate.
That's a good point because we definitely don't like we've all experienced the PowerPoint with like lots of bullet points and little itty bitty slides. I mean, not that yours were like that at all, but that's probably coming into it. That could have been the assumption that they had.
Yes, absolutely.
All right. So you're preparing for it and you're getting ready to go to the conference. And what did you bring with you? Did you bring your own laptop? Did you bring like that kind of stuff for your slides? Or did the conference say that they were going to have everything set up for you?
Yeah, so we had to upload our presentations several days before the conference. So everything was in their Google Drive, but I did bring a thumb drive with my presentation formatted in PDF and PowerPoint.
Mhm.
And I brought my laptop just in case there was something wrong. So I had attended a session in my room earlier and there were technical difficulties. I was like, oh, I'm so glad I have everything with me. I had too much, but I don't think I would have been comfortable without having that. Um, so, yeah, it was interesting because there were some formatting issues when I pulled up the slide in the room. So
Mhm.
now I know that I need to like create images rather for certain ones rather than just have it in the PowerPoint. So it was a really good learning experience. I brought branded pens with me. I brought feedback forms and workbooks. Now they asked us to upload the workbooks into the app, but everyone in the room wanted a hard copy of everything. So I had them, but I'm glad I had them.
Yes, and that was another thing that I think that a lot of we also assume that after 2 years of virtual, like, we're used to everything being digital and we want everything digital, but there's something just about holding, paper and a pen and being back in an in-person event that almost gives us a sense of normalcy or like a return to normalcy, and so providing your audience with those kind of tangible items and, think about it, whether it's a prop or a worksheet or a feedback form can be really helpful.
Yeah, and I don't know how easily it would have been to actually use the workbook in the app, because like you can't really enter into it. I don't know. So it was much better having it in hard copy.
Mary Beth, you mentioned the feedback form, which I used to talk about all the time on the Speaking Your Brand podcast before the pandemic. Of course, we haven't been using them because it is a paper form to pass out at in person speaking engagements. Do you want to share with the audience what the feedback form is, how you structured yours, and what the purpose of it is?
Yeah, so the feedback form, I had used it before the pandemic happened and I loved it. And I really missed it during the pandemic because it didn't fit well into a virtual experience. So the objective of it is to have the audience tell you what their main takeaway is and how they're going to apply it, to ask for feedback. What is the one thing that I could do differently as a presenter? To make this better, and then check boxes where they could say if they wanted me to present to their organization, if they wanted more information, if they wanted a free consultation, all of that kind of thing. And I got some great feedback from the audience. So it was just a treasure trove.
It is, and the feedback form is truly a goldmine of information for several reasons, like you mentioned, Mary Beth. Number one, you get testimonials from it right there on the spot. So you pass it out to the audience. It's there for them at the beginning with their workbooks. Then at the end of your presentation, ask them to fill it out, and then you collect or have a volunteer collect the feedback forms at the end. So that way, you're not waiting for the conference to submit their surveys, and then sometimes speakers survey results from the conference, sometimes they don't, but sometimes it takes a long time. You get it right there. Then you can take those testimonials, put them on the speaker page of your website, which is really helpful. And
Yeah.
then and then you have the lead generation check boxes at the bottom, which then you can follow up with those people right away. You don't have to hope that they remember who you were and to reach out to you 3 days after the conference, after they've heard a bunch of other speakers. You're the one in the driver's seat. And now you can reach out to them to take the next step.
Yes, it was wonderful. And everyone who filled it out, they gave me their email address. I used a QR code for my free download, so people used that. So it worked really well.
Mm. Okay, so Heike Martin. Hi, Heike. Nice to see you. So she says that she's been to several live in-person presentation this year already, and too many things online didn't work. Polls, questions, etc., interrupted the flow. Great point. And that's why, like, relying too much on technology, even if it's virtual presentations, but relying too much on technology can definitely backfire because it either can interrupt the flow or make you as a speaker nervous about something's not working and then is a critical element to what you need and then you don't know what to do next. So I like going old school.
Yeah, yeah, it was wonderful. Hi, Heike. Thanks for joining us.
And I remember that keynote talk that I gave last September, I had no slides because for keynotes, I don't usually use slides unless there happened to be like a picture that I really felt like was critical to show the audience. But I'm glad I didn't have slides because the event wasn't set up with a screen. If I had asked for one, maybe they would have, but I was really the only speaker, and then they had the MC and some other people like a panel. And so no slides. And the other thing that I have seen that the change from before the pandemic to now is shorter speeches. It used to be most keynotes would be 60 minutes, even 90 minutes. And that would be hard for me to sit through nowadays for most audiences, I think. I see now most keynotes around 30 minutes, even the 25 to 30-minute mark, because I feel like event organizers recognize that the audience wants to keep things moving. They need to keep the agenda moving. And if if it's too long, then the audience starts getting restless. And then what do they like? Pick up their phone and start scrolling for their next dopamine hit.
Yes, and so that's wonderful. I just feel like the slides are still a little bit of a safety net as a speaker. But I love that you do the keynote without any slides. It
Well,
makes
I did have to be fair. I had notes that were like behind, like on the podium, like behind me. And so if I was like, okay, like I kind of knew what was coming next, but I wanted to refresh my memory, I just kind of like mosey on back, kind of glance at the notes and like mosey back up. So there's a way you can do it where you can still have a little bit of that safety blanket, have your notes without needing to have all of the slides there. And
yeah.
also, keynotes are different because you're not training, it's like story driven, right? So you kind of know what you're talking about anyways versus with a training presentation, you need to hit certain things.
Yes, right. That
All right,
makes
very
sense.
good. This is good. So let's talk about your own thought leadership journey over the past year or so. You had joined our Thought Leader Academy in November of 2020. So towards the end of 2020, graduated in must have been March
Yeah.
of 2021. And then you were one of our speakers for our Brave Will Beyond live virtual summit and shared your story there, which was really powerful. So tell us what has been going on with you? What have you been doing since then?
Yeah. So in September, I started the Struggle to Strength LinkedIn Live series. And so I do that twice a month. And I talk to people who I collaborate with, people who are in my community, and clients about their struggle to strength stories to highlight the strengths that they've developed as a result of difficult times, to try and help people connect the dots to their own stories. And I think that having that experience going through the Thought Leader Academy, putting together my TED style talk, and speaking at the Brave Bold Beyond Summit really helped me get more comfortable using examples from my personal life to share with audiences. So, for example, at the agriculture conference, I started out by telling them how grateful I was for the work that they do serving underprivileged communities because of my uh, childhood depending on food donations, growing up in poverty. And so starting my talk out that way, it was not something I was ever really comfortable sharing on a public forum. But it got everyone's attention, and it's a great exercise for me to make those connections to my audience and the work that they're doing,
Hmm.
so that it makes sense to them why I'm in front of them.
Oh, and I'm so glad that you shared that story. I remember you posting about it on LinkedIn before the event, the speaking engagement, and I commented, Mary Beth, I hope you shared the story in your presentation. You said, yes, yes, I am. I said, okay,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, it was a little my voice, like, crackled a little bit in the very beginning, but I got through it, and my
Mhm.
husband was in the audience, and he said, "Oh, that was really good," because I didn't tell him I was gonna do that. And he said, "Oh, everybody, they were looking down and you started," and they all looked up and were like, "Wow, where is she going with us?"
Oh, I love that. So what is next for you speaking wise? What do you have, plans for this year and what would you love to be doing?
Yeah, so I have a speaking engagement in Chicago in July with the Group Practice Owner Summit. So, this is mental health practitioners who own group practices, and it's a business conference for that community. So, I'm very excited. That was supposed to be last year, and so it was postponed to this year. So, I can't wait to meet everyone. Um, and yeah, I am looking to book just one more in person speaking engagement for this year.
Great. Well, and I
Yeah.
know you're coming to our client retreat speaking intensive here in Orlando in April, so just over a month away, which is going to be so great to see you again in person and for you to get some video for your speaker reel.
Yes, I can't wait for that. I'm already making all kinds of plans for that for that trip. My reservations are set. I'm very excited.
And I can't believe you live in Pennsylvania and this will be your first time in Florida.
It will be my first time in Florida. That's right. I've been to many places around the world, and I have not been to Florida. So I am glad my first time will be with you, Carol.
Yes, yes, and we'll show you the best parts of Florida. So
Great.
all
I'm not a
right.
big fan of the heat, so I've never been there. So, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, me too, and I know the first time we met in person, and it happens to be the most recent time, was when I was in New York City in August of 2019, and I did a kind of like a spontaneous meetup luncheon, and a bunch of you who live in the area in New York, Pennsylvania, even Delaware came in for that, and that was so lovely.
Yes, that was a wonderful day, and it's amazing the connections that were made on that day that have persisted ever since. It was a
And that's
wonderful
the
time.
power of in-person events, and I know, like, I actually just joked to my husband last week that I already live in the metaverse because I spend literally all of my time on Zoom, really,
Yeah.
virtually, and I've gotten so used to it that I really have to keep reminding myself of how impactful in-person events are, not just for, like, as humans, we need kind of that, like, just interaction with other human beings as energies, right, as other entities, but also because the connections and relationships you forge in person, it's a different type of connection than just virtual.
Yeah, completely. And just the opportunity to be able to like speak to someone, I had audience members come up right after the talk and to tell me their personal stories and to make those really deep connections. Uh, yeah, it's a wonderful experience. I am very excited about being back in person, even going to, networking events in person. It's great.
Absolutely. And I want to say hi to Rachel. She says she's just had her first large virtual speaking engagements and she's looking forward to in-person events. Yay.
Oh, awesome.
That's great. I have my next in person is at the end of April here in Florida in St. Augustine. So I'm looking forward to that. I'll be speaking on thought leadership to that group of women. So that one's lined up and then we will see what happens. But we usually take a break here in Florida in the summer.
Right, because it gets so warm. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's so
no,
exciting though, Carol.
yeah, and then we'll see and for the fall. Mary Beth, as we wrap up, let the listeners and the watchers tell us a little bit more about your business, who you help and what you help them with.
Yeah, so I teach entrepreneurs and professionals how to create their contingency plan to empower their second in command to keep business and life running smoothly in an emergency. Yeah, so I work with people in group programs or I work with them individually.
So critical and as Mary Beth, you and I have talked about this a lot over the past year and a half after you as you worked with us that as entrepreneurs we have so many things that we're always doing and the thought that we may not be able to be in our business for a period of time is something that most of us don't want to think about because we can't imagine what would happen in our business if we weren't there, but it could happen and it's better to be prepared and to have everything in place, especially not only for you as the business owner but whoever needs to be responsible while you're not available, giving them that sense of peace of mind and the information they need.
That's exactly right. And we just, it is a very compassionate act to create your contingency plan and to relieve that stress for those people who depend on you in your business and in your personal life. And like I was saying to the agricultural community, even if they needed to leave their business to go help someone else, a fellow farmer, a fellow business owner, or if they needed to help someone in their family, they have to be prepared for someone else to step in and keep their, business running the way that they need it to run.
An idea just popped into my head is so I read this book called Clockwork by Mike Michalowicz. He's mostly known for his book Profit First. This book Clockwork came out maybe in 2018. I really enjoyed it because it kind of walked you through thinking about the different aspects of your business. And at the beginning, he issues a challenge to the readers, the business owners, of taking a month-long vacation. By the time you finish like implementing all of the things that he recommends. So it may take you 6 months, a year, 2 years to kind of get everything in order. If you think about it, Mary Beth, like the contingency plan could be thought of as like the first step to releasing you as the business owner, the entrepreneur, the CEO to see like, oh, maybe it is capable. Like I can actually hand the business off to someone. I could take a 2-week vacation or a 4-week vacation and
That's
the
right.
business would survive.
That's an excellent point. And I think, especially after going through the pandemic, I think that we've all become more tied to our business rather than less. And so we're going to have to go through this extraction exercise to get
Yes.
back to taking, vacations and going away from our business. So that's an excellent example of the value of a contingency plan.
Yes. Well, so for all of you who are watching, make sure to connect with Mary Beth on LinkedIn. Her LinkedIn profile should be on somewhere on the description. And then, of course, also you can just search for her name. And then, Mary Beth, tell us your website so people can find you there as well.
Sure, it's nichepartnershipconsulting.net.
Fantastic. Mary Beth, thank you
Yeah,
so much for coming on our LinkedIn Live show. And thank you for being a client. Can't wait to see you next month.
I can't wait to see you too, Carol. Thank you.